On today's show, it's a crossover edition episode as we preview the Rockets-Warriors NBA Cup quarterfinals game with Locked On Warriors host Charlie Walter. What are the biggest questions for the Warriors? What are the biggest questions for the Houston Rockets? It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. What are you looking forward to? What are your predictions for this Rockets-Warriors game? Or just come by, say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Also, subscribe to the new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. All right, let's get into our Rockets-Warriors NBA Cup quarterfinals game preview. Woo. Joining me here for our Locked On crossover event, we got Charlie Walter, host of Locked On Warriors. I'm Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets. And Charlie, this is going to be a really fun, exciting game between two teams that have, quite frankly, a lot of history together. One of the best rivalries in the NBA. A bit of a one-sided rivalry, unfortunately, for Rockets fans. Not a lot of winning coming from the Rockets side of things here, including this, historic franchise-tying 15-game losing streak that the Rockets have ongoing against the Warriors right now. It's been a little rough around the edges for the Rockets here, but look, just give me your thoughts really quickly. How excited are you for this matchup between these two teams?
Man, I'm excited to see some high-level Cup action. Some high-level NBA Cup action. Last time the two teams played, Warriors held them to 93 points. Rockets couldn't hit a shot, but they fought. Warriors got it done without two of their best players in franchise history, not just on this year's team. So Warriors found out ways to get it done. Can they do the same? What's the status of Andrew Wiggins? There's a lot going on right now in the land of the Golden State Warriors, as there is in the land of the Houston Rockets. So just excited to see some more high-level basketball between, one of the older teams in the NBA and one of the youngest teams in the NBA.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we're gonna focus on the Warriors here in segment one. We'll flip the script. I'll ask you questions about the Warriors here, then you'll ask me questions about the Rockets in segment two, and then we'll talk about the matchup in segment three, kind of what our expectations are, certain matchups to pay attention to, predictions, all that good stuff. So where I want to start with you, Charlie, is kind of what's been the biggest difference between last year's Warriors team, finishing, 10th in the Western Conference, barely making it into the play-in. They were kind of in that dogfight at the end of the season with the Rockets for that final play-in spot in the West. And then this year's team, right, who, up until that recent losing streak that they went on, that 5-game losing streak, they were right there at the top of the Western Conference. So kind of what's the biggest difference between last year and this year?
I think it's as simple as going to the paper and literally just looking at the two teams on paper and which you've added and which you've lost. And at the end of the day, what you lost was Chris Paul. You also lost Saric and you lost Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson, I think 20 games in or whatever, it's safe to say is not the same player that he once was. No doubt about it. Struggled mightily last year towards the end of his tenure with the Golden State Warriors. And not only that, but I think some of the vibes were a little bit off. I mean, that's a player that is used to one thing and one thing only, and that's winning. Because when the Warriors did have some of their losing seasons, Klay Thompson wasn't even, suited up. So all he knew was winning. And when the winning stopped and the personal accolades kind of stopped and Klay was just struggling in general, the vibes were just a little bit off. That's step number one. And then looking at the paper, number two, it's just Andrew Wiggins has been so much better than last year. And everyone that's young is now a little bit older. Looney's having a better season. Gary Payton II's having a much better season. So it's the little things in between the cracks that is the reason why this year's team is, I think, significantly better than a season ago. But the record would say that it's just a little bit better. I mean, let's not forget that Golden State did win 46 games last year. I know it was good enough for just a play-in spot, but it was pretty loaded West. Let's remember that.
And it's still a loaded Western Conference at that. What have Kyle Anderson and Buddy Hield brought to this Warriors team this year?
Yeah, I guess I forgot to bring up them. They're pretty important pieces, specifically Buddy Hield. I mean, Anderson has come in. He's known his role. His minutes have kind of dwindled from time to time. The last two times these teams played, Anderson only played 14 minutes, but was good. Scored 8 points in that game against Houston. And he's just a steady hand off the bench where you know what you're going to get. He's not going to make mistakes. He's not going to play too fast. And somehow his slowing it down style has worked with Golden State, makes the right passes in the second unit. So he's just been exactly that, a steady hand. But when it comes to Buddy Hield, he's been what we thought he would be. That's a flamethrower and an inconsistent one at that. Beginning of the year when Golden State was at their best, Buddy Hield was scoring 20 plus a night consistently. He was hitting 6-7 3-pointers. The team as a whole, I mean, preseason, they hit 27, they hit 20. They were kind of hitting that number at a regular clip. Haven't seen it at all as of late, but Buddy had 7 in their previous matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves, 27 points. It was his best game in a month plus, and that's what they need from Buddy every night. You're not going to get it from Buddy every night, but just the threat of him being out there alone does help space the floor, and he's been a huge contributor when he's on. We've also seen games where his minutes have dwindled down to like 12, 13 minutes.
Kuminga's had a couple kind of career outings against the Rockets so far this season. In fact, his 2 highest scoring games of the season coming against the Rockets. He had 33 in the last outing, 23 in the one before that, early in November. What has he done kind of in those games that's made him so effective compared to kind of his play against other teams so far this season?
Well, I look at what he did the last game, and it was just knocking down his first couple of threes. Once he knocks down the mid-range, the turnaround jumper, the elbows, and then the three-pointer as well, and can really extend, that's when he's so dangerous, because we all know what he can do downhill. You sag off him a little bit, and he starts hitting that shot. I mean, bam, you saw what he did against Houston. He was able to get up 22 shots, man, hit 13 of them, 3 of 6 from deep, gets to the free throw line pretty consistently on his best days. Doesn't knock him down at a great clip, but was 4 of 6. And then the rebounding, he had 6 in the previous game against the Houston Rockets. When he can, grab 5 rebounds, get up 20 shots, he's electric. Like, he is a damn good basketball player. I don't know what it is about Houston's style that allows him to play his best basketball, because he was the reason they won when they blew the 30-point lead. It was sent to overtime, and then Kuminga was able to close it out with Draymond Green on the bench after fouling out. But I think it has something to do with Houston's physicality and their toughness. It's like matching physicality with physicality. That's what I like to say. But I think it's as simple as when he sees his first couple of shots go in, and also has the wiggle room to play 33 minutes due to Steph Curry and Draymond Green being on the bench. He was kind of forced to play that amount of minutes. I think that has a lot to do with it. He's just someone that thrives when he is in the position of being the man. Everyone knows those types of people growing up in athletics, that the better position you put them in to succeed, it's not rocket science. Sometimes they just, turn into the alpha and succeed. And that's what we got from Kuminga in the last game. Some grit, finesse, the ability to hit his jumpers, and just a true alpha-like performance. And then we saw in his previous game against Minnesota, it was, kind of the opposite at times. Struggled to start. They give him more minutes. And once the Warriors give Kuminga more minutes, he kind of figures it out. So that's a big key for Kuminga moving forward, is how many minutes a game is he going to get? Are they going to allow him to fight through some of his struggles? They did in the prior game, and it worked out perfectly. So that's kind of Kuminga in a nutshell right now. He's still young.
What was kind of, I guess, the biggest reason, I alluded to this earlier, that 5-game slide that the Warriors went on, that they, unfortunately for Rockets fans, ended against Houston? What was the biggest reason for that 5-game slide?
It was because most of the games were close. I mean, you point to the one right there in the middle with Oklahoma City. Warriors were right there, and I think you can point to just not having Steph Curry. They didn't have enough bucket makers down the stretch. You throw Steph in the mix, you'll never know the result, but I think it probably would have been a different story. The Spurs, Golden State just forgot how to play basketball late. Same happened with the Brooklyn Nets. Turnovers have been an issue, just untimely turnovers that turn to points the other way with the live ball TOs. Rotations have been a strong talking point this season. With the strength in numbers mantra, it just seems like it's hard to push all the right buttons at the right time. And there's always the talking point afterwards of why didn't you play this guy in this situation? It's never that simple, but I think you can do some pointing to that. And then it's as simple as team defense. The team defense has struggled a bit at times down the stretch of some of these games. And, you blew, I think, an 18-point lead to the Nets, an 18-point lead to the Spurs. That's 2 games you should have had right there. And then the one against Oklahoma City, where you led a lot of that game and felt like you could have pulled it out despite missing Steph Curry. So quite frankly, it wasn't the most depressing 5-game losing streak of all time, although it felt the vibes were really being depleted quickly. You just look at how they were able to go up 18 points in a game. It's a lot better at looking at that as compared to the opposite, where it's like they're not even in any of these games. They just look like the Jazz or the Blazers did against the Warriors to begin the season, and that's no contest.
It might not have been during that 5-game losing streak, and they did ultimately win the game, but the Warriors also gave up that ridiculous 31-point lead to the Rockets in the first meetup of these two teams, right? The Rockets had that huge fourth quarter comeback. They forced OT. Then obviously Kuminga, rose to the occasion, closed them out. But it seems like maybe that's a bit of a recurring trend with this Warriors team.
It's just lack of a score. If Buddy Hield is not going off, like we said, and hitting the 5-6 3-pointers, and you're not getting a ton from Buddy, and there's no more D'Anthony Melton to potentially help you out with 18 points a game. I mean, you just go down the roster. Podziemski's not scoring it. He's shooting horribly. Trace Jackson Davis doesn't score. Kyle Anderson is what he is at this point in his career. Gary Payton, I mean, God love him. He's a great player. Cannot hit a shot. I mean, cannot hit an open 3 to save his life this season. I think he's under 25%. Moody's been on and off. He's been injured here and there. Pat Spencer, Lindy Waters was supposed to be a good shooter. He can't really shoot the ball. And then, a combination of Wiggins, Kuminga, Curry have been out in one of these games the last couple of weeks. So they all kind of add up to where the Warriors just, they're gritty. They're good enough defensively in spurts. They can get out in transition and score, but they just need someone else to take the pressure off Steph Curry. It's been Jonathan Kuminga as of late, and it was Buddy Hield in their last contest. But who is it going to be consistently?
Coming up, Charlie's going to grill me about the Rockets as we continue our Rockets-Warriors preview for the NBA Cup quarterfinals game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, take a look at all the different odds available. Check out their parlay builder. Take a look at the different season leaders, division award winners, all that good stuff, or just the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Lions plus 270, the Chiefs plus 500, the Eagles right behind them at plus 550, and rounding at the top 5, you have the Bills at plus 650 and the Ravens distant 5th place at plus 1,000. So all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Mint Mobile. With big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get, guys. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say goodbye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. $15 a month with Mint Mobile. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, it's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Visit mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
And continuing on here at our Locked On Rockets and Locked On Warriors crossover edition episode. We appreciate you for tuning in, whether you're on the Warriors feed, tuning in for Charlie, you're on the Rockets feed, tuning in for me. We appreciate you being an everydayer and making this show part of your day every single day. All right, Charlie, let's talk a little Houston Rockets. What you got for me?
Let's do it, man. I want to know when Tari Eason was missing the last game against the Golden State Warriors, because I told you before we started the show, I'm a big Tari Eason guy. Grew up in Cincinnati, big Bearcats fan, Houston fans, Cougars fans that are watching the show are going to hate to hear that. But Tari was our guy for a season. We thought he was the future. Coach gets fired. Actually, fun fact, they were playing a walk-on that scored 0 points per game at Cincinnati over Tari Eason to prove a point. He was getting the minutes and starting over Tari Eason. And now look at him. How important is he to this team's success? Because we were talking about last game, Curry, Draymond missing. Eason for the Rockets, I mean, that's a pretty big guy to miss.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, last year, even though the Rockets, had their first good season in a number of years, they finished 41-41. Tari only played a quarter of the season. And the Rockets, very easily, you could have looked at them on paper, and if Tari had played a full, healthy season, you could have envisioned that Rockets team winning anywhere from like 4 or 5, 6 more games that year just from his sheer impact alone. He's a guy that makes things happen when he's on the basketball court. He's a big part of, he fits perfectly into this new kind of defense first, gritty, physical team identity that Ime's really fostered here in Houston, and something that's new this season that wasn't there last year. Last year was about just cleaning things up, right? Get the defense right, cut down on turnovers, basically put the training wheels on with Fred VanVleet at point guard. This year, he's really leaned into, okay, where can this team have a competitive advantage against their opponents? What can they do to be able to be different? What's the difference maker? What's their win condition on a nightly basis? And that's been offensive rebounding and second chance points. And Tari Eason has an absolute nose for the basketball. You want to talk about, like, some of his previous coaches have talked about, putting him up there along the likes of like Dennis Rodman for the way that he finds loose balls, for the way that he's able to get offensive rebounds and get those second and third chance opportunities. And it's kind of demoralizing, right? Like, there's nothing worse than you play a good defensive possession or, 15, 20 seconds of good defense, shot goes up, and then somehow this dude walks away with the rebound and you give up a wide open layup, or he kicks it back out for a 3-pointer. And at least like once per game, Charlie, Tari has these steals where he has no business getting them, but he just like straight up just like strips the ball from an opposing player. Like, sometimes it usually happens in the backcourt. Like, it'll be, players walking the ball up, or they just got a rebound. They've got the ball. It's secure in their hands. And then Tari just comes crashing in with those big, like, baseball mitt-sized hands that he has, swipes down at the ball. He's super strong, really physical, and just rips the ball away. It looks like it looks like a father playing with his son in the driveway with like a Nerf ball, just the way that he rips the ball away from some players. And then he just goes the other way for a breakaway dunk, slam, layup, whatever it is. Tari's huge for this Rockets team. And him and Amen Thompson being able to check in off the bench together. Rockets fans have dubbed them the Terror Twins, right? Like, that's the impact that they have. They terrorize opposing units when they're on the court together.
One of the things that's so nice with offensive rebounding, obviously, usually when you grab them, you're 2 feet away from the bucket. You stick it back up and in, leads to a bunch of second chance points. Also, the kick out. It's something that the Rockets, unfortunately, are not equipped to do well right now, because they shoot it near the bottom of the league at 33% from deep. They clearly knew that was going to be an issue heading into the season, bringing in Reed Sheppard in the draft, and by the way, here's another plug, Jackson. I was a Lexington sports reporter way back in my day. During, I guess, the shutdown 2020, went and talked to Reed Sheppard when he got his first offer from Stetson. This is a guy, son of Jeff Sheppard, a Kentucky legend. He wasn't even on Cal's radar as a sophomore at South Laurel High School, North Laurel High School in the Lexington area, or the outskirts, man. But he picked it up quickly and has been just a rapidly rising prospect for sure. But he can knock down the shots. But because this season, I mean, the Rockets, where they are right now, is right in the mix for first round playoff action at home. I mean, that's what they're in the mix for right now, is a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. One of the best ways to get that done is going to be finding a shooter somewhere, somehow. Have the talks already started in Houston about finding that shooter? Who would they give up to get him? Like, give me kind of the state of the Rockets in terms of finding some shooting, because it's tough to win NBA championships when you can't really shoot the ball, unless you're the Detroit Pistons, back in the early 2000s. I mean, and they had Rip Hamilton knocking down some mid-range jumpers. I mean, if you can't shoot, you usually don't win.
Yeah, I mean, shooting has definitely been the Achilles heel. Offense as a whole has kind of been the Achilles heel for this Rockets team. There are some games that it looks better than others. Their bread and butter offensively has been the two-man game between Alperen Sengun and Fred VanVleet, much to the chagrin of some Rockets fans who would like to see that offense kind of diversified a little bit and see Ime kind of expand the offensive playbook, but he's not really known as an offensive coach. So you kind of get what you get with Ime. It's a little vanilla at times, but the shooting has been problematic. And there's just up and down the roster, the Rockets have had poor shooters. They've had guys slumping at the worst possible times. Earlier in the season, Jabari Smith Jr. was shooting a league worst 15% on wide open catch and shoot threes. Like it's just straight up abysmal. Jalen Green's been inconsistent shooting the ball. Fred VanVleet's had a bit of a down year shooting the basketball. Sengun is not regarded as a shooter. Dillon Brooks has actually been down shooting the ball compared to where he was last year. Still shooting, about league average, give or take, but, considerably lower than what he was doing to start last season. And then off the bench, the Rockets still don't have a bunch of shooting. I know we, mentioned Reed Sheppard there a moment ago, but Reed Sheppard his shooting hasn't translated yet to the NBA level. He's still kind of working through some of those early rookie jitters. The coaching staff really wants him. They're pushing him to be more aggressive in hunting his shot, finding his shot. And you're starting to see that over these last couple weeks or so. He has been a lot more aggressive about taking those 3-pointers when given them within the flow of the offense, or even just, he'll catch the ball and within, 5 seconds of the shot clock, he's pulling the trigger from long distance. Still not connecting on a bunch of those. As it currently stands, I'm in full agreement with you, right? It's really hard to win at the NBA level with all the emphasis placed on outside shooting, all the emphasis placed on analytics. If you're not shooting threes and if you're not making threes, you're just going to lose the math advantage on most nights. Now, the good news for the Rockets is they try to make up that math advantage with those second chance points, right? They lead the league in offensive rebounding, second chance points, all that good stuff. And that's kind of where they make up a little bit of that difference. So if another team hits 5 to 10 more threes than they do, but they're plus 15 or 20 in the offense, in the second chance points department, even if those second chance points aren't necessarily 3-pointers, but they're just layups, dunks, whatever, it helps kind of cut down that deficit a little bit. And then they just, heavily rely on their defense. But as it stands, man, all the signs are pointing towards the Rockets just standing pat at the deadline. They're very content to just kind of play through this season, see what they've got with the core 7, their young core 7 of talented guys, and kind of reassess this upcoming offseason. Although I'll be honest with you, Charlie, I look at the NBA landscape, and one of the most interesting buy low targets for the Houston Rockets this season is absolutely Zach LaVine. If the Rockets could get Zach LaVine for nothing more than, a bunch of expiring contracts and maybe one first-round pick or something, because he's viewed as one of the worst contracts in the NBA. Nobody's trying to trade for Zach LaVine right now. The Bulls would love to probably offload him and get some salary cap relief, all that good stuff.
He can score.
He absolutely, he's got 50, it's 50, 43, 80 shooting splits right now on 22 points per game. That's been the Rockets' death knell, is they just can't put the ball in the bucket some games. I mean, you saw it last game against these two teams, but Rockets were missing Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, Warriors obviously missing Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and it was just kind of a dogfight because neither of these two teams had much offense to go with. If the Rockets had Zach LaVine in that game, I feel a lot more confident that the Rockets probably win that one instead of losing with only 93 points on the board. It's really hard to win in the NBA if you don't even crack 100.
That's interesting you brought that up, man, because I do think there's an easy path to get it done for the Rockets if they're willing to get rid of some draft picks, because that's what it's going to take on that contract, right? Multiple years of how many dollars he's making. I don't know the full contract, but
it's 40 million something. It's not great. It's an ugly contract, but
the Bulls will take those expiring contracts, man, though. That's something with the matching that you got to look at nowadays. And the Warriors have a lot of them too with Peyton and Looney, but now all of a sudden we're looking at Loon with how well he's played in the last few games. It's we don't want to give up Loon. Warriors have no bigs. You can't give up Loon. So that's kind of what I'm looking at with the Warriors too, is how are they going to find themselves a scorer? Another player that's been brought up on our show is Miles Turner, because he's a stretch big and allows you to kind of reconfigure your lineups and maybe play a little more Kuminga, Draymond together, a little more Kuminga, Wiggins together, whatever it may be, which you can't necessarily do with Trace Jackson Davis because of the spacing issues that you have. So it's all a spinning wheel right now for a lot of these teams, but it is interesting you say that they're probably going to stand pat, because I think the take was before the season that this was kind of a trial season for the Rockets, right? They're on the rise. They're not here yet, but the more and more we're seeing, they could be a player away from being here. And would LaVine be that guy? Would it make sense? I don't necessarily know. You'd have to answer that. But I think without him, and granted, no Tari, so it is a little different story, but I think you see the formula to beat them. You play great defense, which the Warriors do. from time to time, a top 5 team to start the season defensively, and you hold them to 93 points because you shoot at 26% from 3 because there are no threats on the Rockets to hit consistent deep threes. That is a way that you can take them down, and it shows you how the Warriors were able to take a 30-point lead against the Houston Rockets earlier in the season and then give that lead entirely up, because once the energy flips against Houston, it's tough to stop them, man. When they're running around with those long arms everywhere, it's tough to stop them. They come at you. They're like the Cougars, man, and Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Look, I mean, that's this is one of the things about this Rockets team. In the last couple losses that they did have, first against the Sacramento Kings, they had the huge meltdown at the end of the game. Sengun gets ejected. Ime gets ejected. He completely rips the refs a new one after the game. In fact, I got that. Where's our little soundbite? Here we go.
Get some glasses. Open your eyes.
He was hot after that game. And then, they go into the Warriors game, and there's definitely I think a bit of a mental component against this Warriors team where the Rockets just see the Warriors jerseys and they psych themselves out a little bit about playing against this team. But that identity of being that physical, gritty, hard nose, they're going to outwork you, out hustle you every single possession. It's a great identity to have, and it's led to their success this season. But the downside is, right, and this is the catch-22 here, is the moment you take your foot off the gas, the moment you aren't encompassing that identity every second of the game that you're out there on the floor, that's when you lose possessions. That's when you start losing a game. The Rockets are not a team that has an abundant amount of talent where they're just better than you on a nightly basis. They're not the Celtics. They're not the Warriors. They don't have a tier 1 star like a Steph Curry that they can rely on to bail them out of certain situations or get hot and just win you a quarter or win you a game by himself. The closest they've got to that is Alperen Sengun, and he's had some insane late game heroics this season against the Wolves, against the 76ers. But he's not that guy yet. And so for the Rockets, their whole win condition, right, is they have to come in and they have to be the aggressors from the jump. They have to come in and hit you in the mouth early and fast and be that team that's going to be physical and hard to beat, wear you down defensively. And again, if the starters don't come in with the right juice, then they have kind of their 2 Energizer bunnies coming in off the bench in Tari Eason and Amen Thompson to be able to kind of change the landscape of the game. You got anything else for me, Charlie? Or you want to get to our final segment here and talk about the matchup and some of the things we're looking forward to in this game?
I want to talk about the matchup, man. Let's get to it.
All right, we're going to talk about the matchup. We're going to get some predictions and final thoughts about this Rockets-Warriors NBA Cup quarterfinals game. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, if you're buying tickets, if you're trying to get tickets to this Rockets-Warriors game here in Houston, go check out Game Time. It's the best ticket buying experience on the market right now. They've got so many amazing features. Their Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different ticketing offers, but they've also got their Game Time ticket covers, the lowest price guarantee, views from your seat so you know exactly what to expect when you get to your venue. My personal favorite is their all-in pricing. So when you download the Game Time app, you toggle on the all-in pricing feature. They're fully transparent with you from start to finish. That way, look, they don't price gouge you. They don't hit you with those hidden fees along the way. None of that stuff, right? So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
Game time.
And final segment here at our Locked On Rockets, Locked On Warriors crossover edition episode. All right, Charlie, this game, I got to be honest, going into this game, I don't know where my confidence level is at because, again, Rockets have lost 15 straight games to this Warriors squad. Now, a big chunk of those 15 losses came during the Steven Silas era. Rockets were tanking. You can ball up and throw away a bunch of those. But even during the Ime Udoka era of this team, so last season and a little bit of the way through this season, they're 0-5, 0-3 last year, 0-2 this year. It's been the same starting lineup across all 5 games. Fred, Jalen, Dillon, Jabari, Sengun. I don't know, man. Like this seems like it's easily the biggest game that this Rockets team has played in years because it's a Cup quarterfinals game. You win, you get to go to Vegas. You're in the semifinals. You have a chance to go to the championship round. Warriors have played in a lot bigger games as of late than the Rockets have, and they've got guys with experience who have played in these kind of big games. Rockets have a few guys, right? Fred, Dillon, some of their vets have been in big games, but a lot of the young guys, this is going to be the biggest game they've ever played in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Warriors are they're going to be ready for it. I think they're playing decent basketball right now. Steph Curry, after the play where he said it was, I guess the night where Draymond Green comes off a Curry screen, Curry lays the wood on Rudy Gobert, who Draymond's not a fan of. Draymond slams it home. He's barking, running up down the floor, making sure that he finds Rudy Gobert with the night. You could see Steph in the background just going nuts. And he said that was a huge spark for this year's team. It just felt like the vibes were kind of off, and maybe they're back on after winning 2 of 3, taking down 2 good teams in Houston and Minnesota. I think it's kind of come down to team defense. Are the Warriors moving on a string? Are they not overhelping? They didn't have Curry and Draymond the last game, so you would have to imagine that adding those 2 to the mix with the way they move it on offense, the way that they could space it, the way that they can knock it down. And yes, I said Draymond's having an excellent shooting season, not just for his standards. I mean, he's shooting 40% from deep. But yeah, adding in Curry, you would have to imagine that this is going to be a little more high scoring than that 99-93 slugfest that they had. It was interesting because that game, it felt like the Warriors just needed to kind of win TV timeout to TV timeout. You know, that was the talking point. Like, can they hang in there against this Rockets team? Can they take these punches, hang around, and sneak one out? And then by the end of it, it was just like, can they hold on? Can they hold on to, forget just hanging around? They went up big. They kind of blew the lead. Can they figure this thing out down the stretch after blowing so many fourth quarter leads and scored just enough to win? And the answer was yes, with Jonathan Kuminga going for a career high 33. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if Wiggins is 100% back and healthy. And then from there, what they do with some of these lineups, rotations, and minutes. I mean, Hield went for 27 in the last game, 13 the prior game. Where does the Buddy Hield cycle land on today? Is it going to be, Buddy Hield knocking down 6 threes, or is it going to be Buddy Hield kind of a no-show off the bench? That is just a huge dynamic to this Warriors team, is what they get from Buddy, because you're going to get 17 from Wiggins most likely. He's been a stoic and consistent 17, great defense this season. Curry's going to give you his 25. He's not the 50-point guy, at least as of right now, that he was able to throw on you a couple of seasons ago. I don't even think he's gone for 40 yet this year. So you don't expect that from Curry. You expect the 35 or the 25 to 35 pretty consistently every single night. Podziemski's not scoring it. And you go down the list, Warriors can't really score the basketball. So can the Warriors get out, get easy buckets in transition, play the game that they want to play, dictate the tempo? And, the Rockets, they like tempo as well, if I'm not mistaken, right? They don't want to muck it up into a half-court game, or am I completely wrong there?
No, it's definitely, look, I mean, their half-court offense is not great, right? I mean, they run a lot of it through Fred and Alp when they're in the half-court, a lot of DHO on the perimeter, but that's not where they want to play a majority of the game. They want to get defensive stops. They want to force you to turn the ball over, especially those live ball turnovers.
Especially Jalen Green, man. When Jalen Green's running, it's a different game.
For sure. That's one of the things that really helps kind of unlock his level of play. Is he's not a great half-court player at this point in his career, right? He's not a great outside shooter. He struggles even when he's getting, wide open shots from the perimeter, just knocking them down consistently. So when he can get out and run, and that's kind of been his way of getting unlocked, is you see that second unit that the Rockets throw out there when you get the Terror Twins with Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, when they're causing havoc defensively, and then you got Jalen out there with them. If he can get out and run, force a turnover or two, get in transition, get some of those easy scoring opportunities. You said it earlier, right? When guys are in a rhythm, when you see, when Kuminga gets his first couple shots to go, the moment a player, especially if it's a rhythm guy, right? They see those first couple shots start to drop. It kind of unlocks the rest of their game for them. They start to, they're not pressing as hard. They've got their confidence behind them. They've got a little bit of that swagger in their step, that kind of thing. Jalen's exactly that type of player. And he's more or less, I don't want to say he's the swing factor or the X factor for this Rockets team, but he's been the most inconsistent player of the starting lineup for sure. So it kind of depends, what version of Jalen Green do you get in this game? Last game against the Warriors, he had 14 points on 4 of 16 shooting. He had a really, not even a great stretch in the third quarter. It was like an okay stretch in the third quarter. He had 8 points. He had a couple shots. He got a couple free throws, nothing crazy, but he also had some, he had the biggest turnover of the game at the very end in the fourth quarter. Rockets, were trailing by 4 with a minute and a half to go. It felt like all the momentum had shifted Houston's way. And then Jalen Green drives downhill and throws a turnover throws a pass directly into the lap of Gary Payton II. And that kind of killed all the Rockets' momentum to try and get back in and win the game. So what kind of version of Jalen Green do you get in this game is going to be a big part of the Rockets, whether or not they're able to win this one. To me, the most exciting matchup I'm waiting to see is I just can't wait to see Amen Thompson guarding Steph Curry. Steph is one of the most electric offensive players in the NBA. He's the greatest shooter of all time. And Amen Thompson is already making a claim to be one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Sam Vecini was on a pod the other day saying that he thinks Amen Thompson's already the best perimeter defender in the NBA right now in year 2 of his career. The way that he's so disciplined, the way that he uses his incredibly rare combination of size, speed, agility, athleticism, the length that he has. I'm curious to see if Amen can put a little bit of a stopper on some of the damage that Steph Curry is inevitably going to do in this game, especially late in the game in crunch time. We saw a game that the Rockets won recently against the OKC Thunder, where the combination of Amen Thompson, Dillon Brooks, Tari Eason, they helped hold SGA to 0 of 5, or maybe it was 0 of 5 or 0 of 6 shooting in the fourth quarter. Like, that's really tough to do. SGA is one of the best players in the NBA. So I want to see what Amen Thompson can do in that matchup defensively against Steph Curry, for sure.
Yeah, I think every Warriors fan's thinking that Curry at this point's due for a 40 burger because it's been a minute, but he's going to give you 25 in his sleep, man. Whether Thompson's guarding him, whether whoever it may be, Pat Beverly coming back from Barstool to try and guard him. It doesn't matter. Like, he's going to put up his 25 points. It's just what Steph Curry does at this stage in his career. And, the shooting's been pretty good this season. Has still found a way to get to the bucket with his small stature. He's gotten better at that as his career's gone along, man. Just carving through defenses high off the window. And then the assist game from him this year has been incredible, just finding some of his teammates. So it'll be interesting to see, man. That's a matchup that's exciting. We didn't get to see it. I guess we got to see it the first matchup, right? I'm a little did he play? Did Steph play in that first Houston matchup?
That's right.
Yeah.
That was one of the games that he missed earlier this season. That's right. So it was so no Steph in either of these first 2 matchups. So this will be the Warriors have been good first look at him.
Warriors have been good without Steph. I think they're 4-1 or 5-1 without Steph this season, with that only loss being a close one to Oklahoma City. So there's no correlation. Warriors are not better without Steph Curry by any means, but they've played well without him, and that's because they have good players, man. People overlook the fact that Andrew Wiggins is still two-way Wiggs. Draymond's still a force defensively and an orchestrator offensively. Kuminga's had his moments, but the more minutes he gets, it's a direct correlation with scoring. Put up 33 in his last game against Houston. And then if Buddy's knocking down threes, it opens up a different level of the Warriors. It was why they were the best team in the NBA to start the first couple weeks of the season. A lot of it probably had to do with a new system. Teams are trying to figure out how Terry Stotts is going to get Buddy incorporated. They haven't seen him in a uniform, but a lot of it was just Buddy was making tough shots and then started missing some wide open threes as the season went along. So we'll see if the heat check Buddy healed his back, and if so, it's going to be tough for Houston to win this game. I'll tell you that much if the Warriors are fully healthy.
It's going to be tough for Houston to win regardless, because their point of attack defenders, especially, like, they give Fred and Jalen fits. Like, Fred and Jalen have struggled against this Warriors squad. That's part of the reason it doesn't matter that Steph hasn't played these first 2 games. The Warriors defense has just been on another level this season. And in particular for a Rockets team that doesn't really have a true dynamic number 1 option who can just kind of take the game over all by himself, whether it be in isolation or gravity creating for other players. Sengun, again, is the closest thing that they've got to a player like that, but he struggled in the first game. He didn't play in fourth quarter or overtime of that first matchup, struggled in the last game where the Rockets only put 93 on the board. So they need him to be better. They need to be better just from the jump. They need to bring, again, that energy, that intensity, the physicality that's been their calling card all season long. Look, let's get to a couple quick predictions here before we wrap this thing up, Charlie. Look, you said it earlier talking about, Steph being due for a 40 ball. This might be some copium on my part, but I kind of feel like the Rockets are due for a game where they beat the Warriors. Like, they're 0-15. Like, so it's kind of funny. You can look at it through two lenses, right? Like, they're 0-15. Oh, they're guaranteed going to lose. They're going to lose again. They're going to set a franchise and NBA record for 16 straight losses against the same team. It's going to be embarrassing, all that stuff. But I kind of think that, like, this Rockets squad, they've got a lot of pride, right? They've got a lot of fight. They've got a lot of grit. They don't roll over. I think that we could be in store. It's going to be a tough game regardless. I'm not expecting a blowout either way. I don't think this is going to look like that first game of the season where again, the Warriors really outplayed the Rockets in the first half, only held them to 43 points at halftime. That was just kind of an embarrassing display. And then the Rockets flipped the switch and they played how they're supposed to play in the second half. And we saw them force OT and, all that good stuff to kind of make it a tough contested game. I think the Rockets are going to be able to eke out a win here, man. I think it's going to come down to the wire. I think it's going to be a nail biter, but something tells me Rockets are going to squeeze this one out.
Warriors went with the 3-game sandwich earlier in the year against the Pelicans. They took all 3. That third game, though, was tough, man. Went a lot different than the first 2, and there was no Zion Williamson in that third game as compared to the first 2. So I think it's going to be tough as well. But come on now. Full bias. 109-103 Golden State. They get the sweep of Houston in the months of late October and or I guess November and December.
All right, that's going to do it. We want to hear your thoughts, though. Let us know in the comments section of Locked On Warriors, Locked On Rockets, wherever you're listening to this. Give us your thoughts on this Rockets-Warriors matchup. What are you most excited to see between these two teams? What are your predictions from this game? Who's going to ultimately win? Let us know all your thoughts there, but we appreciate you for tuning in. We appreciate you for being everydayers, all that good stuff. From Charlie and myself, thank you so much. We'll catch you guys next time.